Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
All right, Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Dropped this morning. Brand new for you. And it is brought to you by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destination all season long at the Wild Wild West, Tropicana, and Harrah's Resort, Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com. Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast is here. We have a lot to talk about, including a surprise name that has just entered the Eagles injury report, which just came out a minute ago there, Geoff Mosher. The look of your face is kind of showing me that you're not even sure what I'm talking about, but Brandon Brooks, a limited participant today with a knee injury at Eagles practice, and I'm wondering if you know any information. Should we be concerned, or is that just them doing league-mandated due diligence of putting him on the list?
Yeah, Mike, I don't exactly know if that's something that's new, like a flare-up, or if that's just kind of protocol for, technically whenever players are receiving treatments on certain areas of their body, they're supposed to be on the injury report, especially if they don't practice in full, which Brandon Brooks clearly didn't if he was limited. Now, the question is, are they limiting him because they've had a couple of practices here in a row and they're getting closer to a game time and they're really limiting him out of maintenance, more so out of necessity? And that's something that they'll probably shed a little light on more as we get into probably Friday, last press conference of the week before the game.
All right, the other three guys on the list, Landon Dickerson, Rodney McLeod, Davion Taylor. So let's go down the list. Dickerson, I would imagine, is not going to play on Sunday or be active.
I would imagine that you're correct on that. Will not be active, probably not play. He's off the 53. I mean, he's on the 53. He's off PUP or NFI, whatever it was he was on in training camp. But that didn't mean he was just ready to go. It just meant that they felt he would be ready to go within that 6-week period so that they didn't have to put him on a list. But even so, I mean, he's only been just back out at practice recently doing things. So it's hard to believe he'd even be ready to play in a game, even if he was completely medically cleared.
Right. All right. And obviously we kind of anticipated that. The other guy is Rodney McLeod, who I guess today Darius Slay might have let the cat out of the bag just a little bit by saying we wish he was out there, but that's an unofficial way of saying, does it seem doubtful that Rodney McLeod will not play on Sunday?
Yeah, and I think it was fairly doubtful to anybody who's watched the Eagles, and I'm sure the Falcons aren't surprised either to know that he's probably not going to play because he is also just off the list and has not practiced with the team in a full practice format. So, I mean, how good could his conditioning be to just go out there and play safety in a heavy running position and be ready for the game? I mean, you have to see these guys get ramped up first before you can even start to think about them being on the field on a game for an actual game.
Yeah, I know. McLeod would probably of this group be the biggest. Now, obviously, if Brooks didn't play, that would be a big loss. But McLeod would be a pretty big loss because of the depth behind him. Brooks, they actually have a little bit of depth at that position that they could utilize. Who would step in and play safety this week if, in fact, McLeod cannot play?
I imagine Marcus Epps would be the next guy up, just based on how much reps he's got in the training camp. He stayed healthy. They're not exactly deep at that position. They did bring in a couple of guys, as you mentioned, but they're some of them are new to the team, like the guy they brought in from the Colts, Shashiri, I believe is the way you pronounce his last name. So Marcus Epps has been with the team. If Kevon Wallace is healthy enough, I'm sure he'll get some opportunities to get in there. But right now, I would have to say Marcus Epps would go across from Anthony Harris.
Yeah, and so Anthony Harris, obviously, who was signed this offseason, and Marcus Epps could be the starters with Kevon Wallace getting some spots, some time as well. Davion Taylor's the other guy. Now, he was a guy that was, reportedly having a pretty good camp at the start of this thing. Haven't heard much about him since, and he has that calf problem still, another limited participant at practice today. And I would imagine that he would be very questionable to go on Sunday as well.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, this is a guy who really needed every single rep he could get and missed almost every single rep he could get in training camp. I mean, even the idea that he was having a good start to training camp, I mean, he was out and sidelined after 2 practices. So, and then he came back a little bit, and then he was out for the long period of time. So it's really hard to even say how much progress he had made. I know they felt he did a good job in the OTAs, and they were excited about giving him some opportunities to showcase what he had learned and what he could do in training camp, and really more so about less showcasing, more learning, right? And really starting to acclimate. But he is far, far behind the eight ball now and needs a lot of time to get acclimated to this defense and to get healthy. So you're looking for this game at a linebacker committee that will be Alex Singleton and Eric Wilson. You'll probably see TJ Edwards in there for certain times. You might see Jannard Avery as a kind of a Sam backer, a gap shooting type linebacker who can give you some pass rush. And for special teams, you will probably get Sean Bradley out there as well.
All right, so that's the four guys. They're the only four, all limited, which if you are limited, I mean, I guess there's a possibility that all four of those guys could be active. But all the guys on the 53-man roster are healthy. This is what the Eagles wanted, Geoff, right? They wanted to get to this game. They wanted to get to the starting point with full health, and it seems outside of McLeod, who was hurt last year, not something that happened in a preseason game. We don't know specifically what's wrong with Brooks, but they got their wish here.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, they really only had two injuries in training camp that were really severe. One being Tyree Jackson, who I don't think was going to, as good of a developmental story as he was becoming, I'm not sure he was going to be active for game one anyway. And then, of course, Jason Kroom tore his ACL, and he was a long shot to make the team. Honestly, probably the most severe injury is the one we just talked about, and that was Davion Taylor, and that's more sets him back than per se the defense. So yes, they're healthy. Their plan in general worked, and they've been able to practice for the most part. The starters are the starters, and now it's time to get going.
Yeah, and we know. So just to recap, Brandon Brooks with a knee, Landon Dickerson with his offseason knee problem, McLeod also offseason knee, Davion Taylor with a calf. They were limited practice. Everyone else on the 53, full participants. This Brooks injury is somewhat new, I guess, something to keep an eye on. And, of course, Football at 4, we will do that for you here because, if Brooks is out, let's just anticipate, or hypothesize that he might not play. What's that? Herbig would get the start in that spot?
Good question. I tend to think the way they use Jack Driscoll this camp as a guard more than a tackle, that Jack Driscoll, I think, would probably get the start at right guard over Herbig.
All right, so you would see Driscoll there then possibly, because I know on the depth chart, Herbig was listed as the backup left guard. I did not see Driscoll on that depth chart.
Well, that would be strange. With Lane Johnson pretty much practicing all camp long, Jack Driscoll mostly played guard as they cross-trained him, and he talked about that. He was a right guard, even on the second team, if I'm not mistaken. It was Brett Toth as the left tackle, and I'd have to go. And Matt Pryor, I think, played right tackle for the second team. So Driscoll has played guard and tackle, and I think they obviously like Driscoll a lot. He started the season opener last year as a rookie, a fourth rounder. Not that they don't like Herbig, but I just feel like they feel like there's a better prospect and a better player right now in Driscoll.
All right, obviously for Nick Sirianni, this is his first week doing all this. He talked about his brother and his father, but, the whole situation, how is the feeling around Nick Sirianni? Just hearing how the players, it's interesting to me, Moshe, about how, this Zach Ertz thing apparently has just kind of washed away, and he, not only might he be here this year, he might want to stay here for future seasons. Is Sirianni being that well respected by this veteran group of coaches?
Well, I certainly think that the players enjoy Nick Sirianni's presence. They have appreciated how he's come in here and coached the team. He certainly has a vibe about him about talent development. He's not afraid to stop practice and show players what they're doing incorrectly if they do something wrong. He's not afraid to get on his coaches. I think in general, people, after you go through an off season like the Eagles just went through, any kind of new energy feels good right off the bat. It's like the tension is off. Everything that was there from Carson and Doug from last year is gone, and everybody feels probably a little bit liberated right now. But what I think, Quentin Michael and Jason Avant made this point in their Q&A show on Inside the Birds that dropped today, and they said, the real measure of a coach and the player's ability to buy into that coach is how does that coach act now when it flips from training camp to regular season and then week one. So Jason Avant made a point to say if a coach is really energetic, the team's going to be energetic. If the coach is grouse. The team's going to grouse. If the coach is up 1 minute, down the next, that's how the team's going to be. And it's really the even keel, staid personality that tends to do the best in the locker room. The guy who doesn't get too high or get too low. So here you have week one. Anything can happen. This is kind of a coin flip game. I know there's some divisive opinion on who the better team is, and it's an interesting conversation. But it'll be interesting to see how Nick Sirianni, his demeanor is throughout the game, and particularly after the game, if they win or lose, to see how the players react to that.
Yeah, what do you make of how the whole Goddard thing, and he said, I thought we'd have a contract, and now Ertz seems to be thrilled and happy. Rob Motti was on with us yesterday, and he kind of indicated that maybe the team at this point would evaluate the two of them and make a decision moving forward that Ertz, if he plays well, what's to say that he couldn't be here down the road?
I think that's, I understand that viewpoint. I think it's highly unlikely. I can't imagine, based on this team's history and kind of how things work in the NFL, if you draft a player who's younger and he's a second-round pick and he shows you the potential that Dallas Goedert has shown you, and you have a good player at that position who's older and up on the last year of his contract and significantly more expensive, although Dallas would, if you gave him an extension, would then become more expensive. But you get the point I'm saying. I don't know why you wouldn't be more prone to wanting Dallas Goedert on your team for the next 5 or 6 years.
I guess cost, right. But I guess, this coupled with, I guess Tony Gonzalez the other day was talking about how tight ends can go a little older. Like, there's nothing to say at 30 years old, 32, 33, 34, 35, that you could still be a productive player at that position. And if Ertz comes back and I'm very intrigued, Moshe, on when I saw now we didn't talk Monday because of the Labor Day. When I saw the 53 or the depth chart, and we all kind of thought that Watkins was going to be the 3. He is definitively, it looks like, the third guy. What does that mean on how they use those two tight ends together? If you want Watkins' speed on the field, that means you're limiting how much you can use two tight ends.
It certainly is. And that's certainly something that the coaching staff has to figure out. And it does make you wonder, how lockstep were the coaches and the personnel, or Howie, in this case, Howie Roseman, on the tight end / wide receiver situation. I mean, most coaches want to be a 3 wide, 1 tight end team. They want to be an 11 personnel. 12 personnel is not, there are a couple of teams that like 12 personnel, but they're built differently, right? The Ravens are built completely differently than most teams. The 49ers have built themselves differently than most teams. The Patriots for a long time have liked 12 personnel, again, built differently than most teams. The Eagles have invested so much at wide receiver here with Jalen Reagor and with Devontae Smith. And of course, the maturation you've seen from Quez Watkins. That's their youth. That's their spark. You would imagine that they want to be in 11 personnel most of the time. So I am just as curious as everyone else to see how they kind of balance that 11 versus the 12 to get the talent on the field. I'm going to say this. I think based from how I understand it, everything will be situational. So when you see, it won't be happenstance. We're going to go 12 for a few plays. We're going to go 11 for a few plays. They're going to go 11 or 12 based on the matchup they're looking for and based on the down and distance they are on the field.
Yeah, I think of all the things that I'm interested in watching on Sunday is that dynamic of who gets more snaps, Ertz, Goddard, who's used more, who gets more targets, because that's going to be something to keep an eye on almost weekly of how much do they game plan for those two guys, don't you think?
Oh, sure. Let's say the Eagles play 65 snaps on offense. That's kind of like an average game, I think, right? And Zach Ertz plays 20 snaps of those 65. That's, a third of 33% of your offense. Are people going to then say you paying him $8.5 million to play a third of your snap? But then somebody else is going to say, well, who are you taking off the field to put him on for more? You want Devontae out, you want Reagor out, you want Watkins out, especially if any one of those guys has a decent game, it's going to be great fodder. And obviously, if they lose, it's going to be even bigger talk conversation.
Right, and then the whole, hey, Quez Watkins is your number 3. What kind of role does he have? I don't think he has this massive role, but I think they, I liken it, Moshe, to how San Francisco picks their spots with some of the guys they have. Like, they don't have guys who get 100 targets, but when, Deebo Samuel's out there, they find like 5 or 6 times to just find a way to get him the ball. So don't hear man, Watkins is having this great camp. What happened to him? If he gets 2, 3, 4 quote-unquote play calls for him a game, that's probably what they're looking for.
Yeah, I'm going to stress this and emphasize this with Watkins and with others. Situational. I mean, Devontae Smith and Rager are probably going to be out there a lot, and Miles Sanders is going to be out there a lot. But anybody whose role we're kind of uncertain about, it's all going to be situational. If it's 3rd and 3 and Nick Sirianni wants to pass the ball, and he wants to be in 11 personnel, his slot receiver might probably be, I would say, Greg Ward, okay? But if it's 2nd and 3, which is a great play action down, and he wants to be in 11 personnel, maybe that slot receiver is then Quez Watkins, and you work a little play action and you try to throw the ball deep to a vertical slot like Nelson Aguilar was in 2017 and 18 for the Eagles. So or if you want to try to run a little bit on that down, you might throw your 2 tight ends out there with Goddard as an inline blocker and Ertz flexed out. I mean, that is the good thing about this, Mike, is that they can adapt based on the down, the distance, and the situation that they're in.
That being said, and Brooks, let's assume Brooks does play now. We'll hypothesize to that direction where we think Brooks would play. We all think that offensive line, if healthy, is pretty good. How much does that help the potential of what can happen in this game? This is not a very good defense, right? The Atlanta defense has been their Achilles heel the last couple of years. You could get a pretty good start and a good mindset in the first game against this defense.
Yeah, I would think so. You're right. It's not a good defense. And on top of that, one of the reasons that it's not a good defense is because it does not have much in the form of pass rusher. I mean, Grady Jarrett is a very good defensive tackle. A little underrated, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think he's a very good player, but that's one guy. Everybody's got one guy that you got to draw the circle around. After that, I mean, you're talking about Dante Fowler, who hasn't really been forced in a couple of years, and Steven Means, former Eagle, who is a great former Eagle, by the way. Great guy, relentless motor, awesome special teams player. I got to give him I love Steven Means. He's a great guy.
He was
but he's literally like their third best pass rusher now.
Right. He was a great preseason player.
Oh, yeah. But he was mostly a 5th D end and a special. He blocked a couple of kicks in 2017, and all the guys on the team would tell you in practice he gave everybody fits on the offensive line.
Yeah.
So watch out for him. But again, you would rather have to go up against Steven Means as a number 3 pass rusher than if you're the Falcons and Brandon Graham is the number 3 pass rusher on the team.
Let's go about Graham, let's go to the defensive side of the ball. I guess as equally interesting is the split at tight end, which will be the Sweat-Barnett dynamic. I guess that'll be what we're watching on Sunday as well, is who gets the snaps, who gets the bulk of that.
Yeah, they've been very, very kind of coy in the media guides with that. They keep calling them both starters, right? To let you not know which one is really going to take the field when the defense comes out, which to me makes me think that it's going to be Josh Sweat, because what else would you be hiding, right? Because it's been Derek Barnett. So you're only kind of hiding it if you're changing it, I think. So it doesn't really matter, because I do believe that Sweat and Barnett are going to rotate, and it's going to be an almost 50-50 split there. We'll see. But it really, whoever is out there first will be the starter, but I don't think it's going to matter that much. I think they're both going to play a lot.
Geoff Mosher, obviously the Falcons are a team that won 4 games last year, much like Philadelphia. So is this a stealable road game for the 4-win Philadelphia Eagles team?
Absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt about it. The Eagles are the better team in the trenches. Okay, that doesn't mean you're always going to be the best team.
I would say, aren't you going to say that in a lot of their matchups, though, this year?
That's my point. You're going to say that a lot of times, but, coaching, quarterback play, back end of your defense play is going to be vital, too. And those are areas where sometimes that they're going to be, more than sometimes, they'll be, mismatched, or the other team will just be better that day. And then, of course, injuries will inevitably settle in for every team, and that kind of, could take away your strength as opposed to another team which has injuries at a position they're deeper at. So we'll see what happens. But there are no doubt about it going to be the tougher team in the trenches for the Falcons. But the thing is, Matt Ryan's 36 years old. He's a very good quarterback. I would say, kind of like I say with Donovan McNabb. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. He may make it, but he's like Hall of very good. There's nothing he hasn't seen at this stage of his career. So he knows where he wants to go with the ball. He's got Ridley. He has Pitts. It'll be up to Jonathan Gannon, I think, to kind of figure out a way to not just rely on a front four, because I think Matt Ryan knows that's coming, and he's going to know what he wants to do with the football.
Yeah, by the way, Pitts is somebody that I'm really going to be interested to watch on Sunday. I would imagine the Eagles could have some matchup issues with him, especially if McLeod's out.
Yeah, it's weird. I picked Pitts in a PPR draft that I had last night, a little higher than I normally would, but it came to my thought. I like tight ends who are either the number 1 or number 2 option on the team. There aren't that many, but certainly Kelsey is, certainly Kittle is, certainly Waller is, right? And then a guy playing with a pretty good quarterback, and then certainly Matt Ryan is. So I see a chance for Kyle Pitts to get a lot of targets, because if teams are going to take out Ridley, there's really nobody else for Matt Ryan to throw the ball to. I mean, Russell Gage is good, not great, and then they have Zacchaeus as a third receiver. But if Kyle Pitts is what he's supposed to be, a matchup nightmare, then you've got to think that Matt Ryan's going to look to him at least 8 to 10 times a game.
Well, that too, and their running game, Mike Davis, they don't have this great running game. Their offensive line is a little sketchy. So this sets up for a good one for Philadelphia to steal a road win in this division. Could be an interesting storyline down the road. We'll keep our eye on that. Football at 4, of course, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now that the guys are back in season, you can find them all over the place, all over the platforms. And what information do we have for Sunday? Anything you can tell us there, Moshe?
We got a pregame show from 10 to noon. Hope everybody checks it out on our Inside the Birds YouTube platform or other social media platforms. It'll be at up in Philly at Rivers Casino. It'll be myself, Adam Kaplan, Greg Cosell, Jason Avant. Quentin Michael's going to be a part of it. So we're blowing it all out, man. We're going to have some great analysis. There's nobody that talks X's and O's better than this crew. So I would strongly encourage everybody to check in. If you like just X's and O's and not that other pregame stuff where people are like bulletin board material or he said this, we do it right. We're all analysis.
Well, that's 10 o'clock on the Inside the Birds YouTube channel. Check that out every Sunday with the guys. And, of course, Football at 4. Adam Kaplan will be here tomorrow to give us more insight. And we'll keep our eyes on Brandon Brooks as he was a limited participant today at Eagles practice. Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. Thank you, Moshe.
All right, Mike. Have a great one. Talk to you soon.
All right, of course, the Football at 4 today, it is brought to you by Caesars Entertainment. And Caesars Entertainment, come experience the ultimate sports destination all season long at Wild Wild West, Tropicana, and Harrah's Resort Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com. I'm Mike Hill. This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.